Thanks for tuning in to Operation Revenge. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now let's begin the story. My name is Helena. I'm 32 years old and I live in a small town outside of Seattle. It was my wedding day. Raymond and I had been planning this moment for so long, and everything was falling perfectly into place. The reception was full of smiles, laughter, and the soft hum of a jazz band playing in the background. My heart swelled as I looked around at the people I loved, my closest friends, my family, and of course, Raymond. I could feel the joy in the air, but there was something off. It was as if I could sense something else, something that didn't belong. That's when I saw it. A small, beautifully wrapped gift box on the edge of the gift table, just sitting there as if it had appeared out of nowhere. No one was around it. No one was even paying attention to it. But something about it caught my eye. Raymond was speaking to some of his old college friends, but when he noticed me eyeing the box, his expression shifted. His face went pale for a moment before he quickly approached me, his footsteps quick and deliberate. "Helena," he said in a low voice, pulling me aside, "don't touch that box." His tone wasn't angry, but it was firm, and there was an edge of panic that I hadn't expected. I frowned, confused. "What's wrong with it?" "I don't know, but just trust me." "Don't touch it. It's not for you." His eyes were sharp, his jaw clenched in a way I hadn't seen before. It made my heart race, not because I was scared, but because I was seeing a side of Raymond that felt foreign. There was something else going on. Before I could ask more questions, Raymond's gaze flicked over to my younger sister, Violet, who was chatting animatedly with one of the guests. Violet wasn't exactly the innocent little sister I used to know. There was always a sharpness to her, a kind of calculation that had become harder to ignore as we got older. Raymond's eyes lingered on her for a moment longer than I liked, and my stomach dropped. "I need you to trust me," Raymond continued, his voice tight. "It's better if you just leave it alone." I didn't know what to make of it. I wanted to ask more questions, but I could tell that whatever was happening, Raymond wasn't going to share. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. This was my wedding day, and it should have been nothing but happiness. But now there was a layer of unease that I couldn't shake. I turned away, glancing back at Violet, who was still laughing with the guests. I couldn't help but think about the favor she had asked of me just a few weeks ago. It had seemed harmless then, something as simple as helping her set up a small business account. She had been vague about it, but I hadn't questioned her. Now, I couldn't shake the feeling that it might have been part of something much bigger. I looked at the gift box again. It was strange, a wedding gift with no card, no sign of who had left it. But Violet, Raymond's reaction, it all seemed to point back to her in some way. I decided not to touch the box, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. What was it about this little moment that felt like the start of something bigger, something dangerous? It was just a wedding gift, wasn't it? But something told me that what lay ahead wouldn't be as simple as cake and flowers. And that gift, no matter how small it seemed, was the beginning of everything unraveling. The night after the wedding reception, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was horribly wrong. My mind kept circling back to the mysterious gift box and Raymond's strange warning. He wasn't one to overreact. So why was he so adamant about that box? And why did his attention turn to Violet when he spoke of it? I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Raymond's face, the way his jaw had clenched and how his eyes had flicked to Violet. There was something there, something dark, and it made my stomach twist. Raymond had been right to be worried. As I lay in bed, trying to make sense of everything, I kept replaying all the little signs I had missed. Violet's harmless request just a few months ago had seemed innocent enough. She'd asked if I could help her set up a PayPal account, one that she said was for a side project she was working on. She'd explained it away so easily, just a little side hustle to make some extra money, and I'd agreed without hesitation. I even helped her set up the account, walking her through it step by step. At the time, it had seemed harmless, a simple favor between sisters. But now, I couldn't help but wonder if that moment had been a carefully calculated move on her part. What if it was all a setup? The thought made my chest tighten. My phone buzzed beside me, and I almost jumped out of my skin. It was a text from Violet. "Hey sis, can we talk? I've been thinking about everything lately." I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the reply. What did she want now? Was this her way of reaching out after the chaos of the wedding? I felt a mix of emotions. Anger, betrayal, suspicion, and I was no longer sure what kind of relationship we even had anymore. I decided to text back, hoping for some answers. "Violet, I saw the box at the wedding. Raymond said it wasn't safe. What's going on?" I hit send before I could second guess myself. I waited. The dots appeared and disappeared, but there was no response. A few minutes passed, then an hour. Nothing. I tried calling her, but it went straight to voicemail. The silence only made me more uneasy. I glanced over at Raymond, who was already asleep beside me. He had a way of falling asleep quickly, as if his body could shut down from the weight of the world. I envied that. But my mind wouldn't stop racing. What was Violet involved in? And why hadn't she responded to my text? I thought back to Will, my older brother. He was always scheming, bending the truth to fit whatever narrative suited him. I could hear his voice in my head, smooth and convincing, explaining how he needed a little money for this or a favor for that. He'd used my name more times than I could count, often for things I had no idea about until after the fact. I hated that I had always given in, hated how he made everything seem so urgent, like I was the only one who could help. But now, looking back, I realized I'd always been a pawn in his game. I remembered a time when he convinced me to lend him my PayPal account for a business deal he needed to close. I'd agreed, of course, believing it was just another one of his money-making schemes. It had all seemed fine at the time, but I was starting to see the pattern. Will's manipulations were calculated, always for his benefit, never for mine. Raymond had mentioned that the mysterious gift box might have something to do with Will's operations, but I couldn't see how. If Will was involved, what was Violet's role? I knew she wasn't above getting tangled in something shady, especially if it benefited her in some way. I sent another message to Violet, hoping for some clarity. "Violet, please, I need to know what's going on." I sat there for a while, staring at the screen, waiting for a reply that never came. As the minutes dragged on, I felt a knot form in my stomach. Something was wrong. Something deeper than I was willing to admit to myself. Then it hit me. The box, the silence, Violet's past behavior. It all pointed back to one thing: manipulation. And I was starting to realize that I had been played, not just by Violet, but by my entire family. I sat up, pulling the blankets off me. I needed answers. I couldn't wait around any longer. As I slipped out of bed, I grabbed my phone once more. I dialed Raymond's number, and when he picked up, I spoke before he could say anything. "Raymond, I need you to tell me everything you know about Violet and Will. Something's going on, and I don't know who to trust anymore." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When he finally spoke, his voice was grim. "Helena, I think Violet's involved in something more serious than you realize. But I think Will's been using your name in some way again. We need to figure this out before it gets worse." I felt the weight of his words settle on my shoulders. My family, the people I had trusted for so long, were hiding things from me, things I never could have imagined. And Violet? She wasn't the innocent sister I had once believed her to be. I took a deep breath and set my phone down. This wasn't just a family issue anymore. This was a betrayal, one I needed to confront head on. I wasn't going to wait for Violet's reply. I wasn't going to wait for any more signs. The time for answers had come, and I would get to the truth, no matter how ugly it was. The game had changed. The next morning, Raymond and I sat in the quiet comfort of his office, the weight of what was unfolding pressing heavily between us. He had been insistent that we get to the bottom of things. And now, sitting across from Agent Nichols at the NCIS office, I felt the chill of realization creeping in. My family, the people I trusted most, had been playing a part in something that was far beyond anything I had imagined. Agent Nichols, a seasoned investigator, was calm as ever, his eyes scanning the documents spread out on the table. Raymond leaned forward, his fingers tapping the edge of the folder in a rhythm that betrayed his growing frustration. My heart raced as I tried to make sense of the papers in front of me. "This," Agent Nichols began, his voice steady, "is where we're seeing your name involved. Multiple fraudulent transactions using your personal information, Helena. These were not just random acts. Someone's been using your identity to move large sums of money through fake businesses and false accounts." I looked at the evidence, my stomach sinking deeper, with each page I turned. Bank statements, transactions, forged signatures, it all pointed to something far more intricate than a simple mistake. It was deliberate. The dates matched up with everything that had happened recently: the wedding, Violet's sudden request for help, and my own innocent involvement. But there was something more sinister at play. I glanced at Raymond, his face hard, eyes narrowed in concentration. He was putting the pieces together just as quickly as I was. He spoke before I could find the words. "Violet's fingerprints are all over this," he said quietly, his tone barely above a whisper. "But Will? He's the one who started the chain of events." I can't shake the feeling that they've both been playing you, Helena. Will, my older brother. The same one who had used every excuse to manipulate me in the past. I felt a sharp pang of betrayal. His history of lying, scheming, and bending the truth to suit his needs suddenly made so much more sense. He'd been using me, just like he always had. But now it wasn't just about money or favors. It was about something bigger, something far more dangerous. I should have known, I muttered, more to myself than anyone else. He's been using my name for years, for things I didn't even know about until it was too late. Raymond nodded. It's not just Will, though. Violet's involved. She's the one who's been pulling the strings, setting things up in the background. I think she knew exactly how far she could push you. My heart sank even further. My sister, my sweet, seemingly innocent younger sister, was playing a role in all of this. She had always been the one I tried to protect, the one I believed in when no one else did. But now, the truth was undeniable. Violet had crossed a line, and I had let her. I had been blind to the manipulation. I picked up my phone and sent Violet another message. I need answers. Now, what's going on with you? The reply was immediate, but it was not the kind of answer I was hoping for. Stop looking into things, Helena. You're better off not knowing. This is my mess to clean up, not yours. Her words, cold and dismissive, hit me like a slap. She wasn't going to come clean, not now. Maybe she thought I'd back off if I didn't get the response I wanted. But I wasn't going to let her manipulate me this time. I don't believe her, I said aloud, more to myself than anyone in the room. She's hiding something. They all are. Raymond reached over and placed a hand on mine, a simple gesture that grounded me. We'll figure it out. We've got the evidence now. But we need to keep pushing, Helena. We need to go further. This is bigger than you think. I nodded, determined. The betrayal stung, but it also fueled something inside me. I couldn't let this go, not when my name, my reputation, and my trust were all on the line. Raymond's voice was steady, focused. The next step is to trace the digital footprints. These transactions didn't just happen by chance. We'll follow the money and see where it leads us. If we're right about Violet, we'll find her involved in something bigger. It wasn't just about the money, it was about clearing my name. It was about bringing the truth to light. As much as I wanted to believe that my family wasn't capable of something like this, the evidence was right in front of me. Violet and Will were part of a larger, far more dangerous operation, and I had unwittingly been caught in the middle of it. I want to help you, I said, my voice firm. We need to expose them for what they are, Raymond. I won't let them get away with this. Raymond squeezed my hand once more before releasing it. We will, but we need to stay focused. The next move is critical. We're not just clearing your name, Helena. We're stopping something that could hurt a lot of people. I felt the weight of his words, the enormity of what lay ahead. But in that moment, something else shifted inside me. I wasn't just a victim. I wasn't just the sister who had been manipulated. I was going to fight back. And nothing, not even the people I loved, was going to stop me. The day after our meeting at the NCIS office, Raymond and I began tracking down the digital breadcrumbs that could link Violet to the fraud scheme. The documents Agent Nichols had given us painted a grim picture, but it was still just that, a picture. We needed proof, concrete evidence that Violet had orchestrated everything. I sat across from Raymond at his kitchen table, papers and digital devices scattered all around. The hum of our laptop fans was the only sound in the room as we sifted through the mess of data. The more we dug, the clearer it became. Violet wasn't just an innocent bystander. She was deeply involved, playing a key role in manipulating everyone, especially me. Look at this, Raymond said, tapping his finger on the screen of the laptop. He turned it toward me, and I saw a string of transactions under my name. But the destinations weren't what I expected. Large shipments of goods had been routed through various companies I'd never heard of. These were processed under your name, Helena, Raymond continued, his voice low. This isn't a simple mix-up. Someone's been moving serious quantities of goods, and it's all connected to you. My stomach churned as I glanced at the shipping invoices. The weight of it all was suffocating. How could this have happened? I never authorized any of this, I said, my voice shaky. Raymond frowned. It wasn't just about using your name to ship stuff. Someone had access to your accounts, your information. They were pretending to be you. I leaned forward, eyes scanning the data in front of me. It had to have been Violet. She must have done this somehow. But why? Why would she target me like this? Raymond sat back in his chair, running his hands through his hair. That's what we need to figure out. She's been hiding in plain sight, taking advantage of your trust. And Will's fingerprints are all over this too. He's probably been involved from the start. But there's something off about Violet. She's more than just a pawn. I swallowed hard. The pieces were falling into place, but they were far from a clear picture. I thought about Violet again. The way she'd always been charming when she wanted something. How she'd wrapped me around her finger whenever she needed help. But I never imagined she was capable of this level of manipulation. There was more to uncover. And then Raymond found it. "Helena, you need to see this," Raymond said suddenly, his voice thick with disbelief. I looked up from the screen and saw the footage he was pulling up on the laptop. It was from a warehouse security camera showing a woman who looked remarkably like Violet. She was directing workers as they loaded large crates onto a truck, handling the shipments with a practiced ease. I froze. "That's her. That's Violet." "Exactly," Raymond confirmed. "And the way she's moving, giving orders, it's clear she's the one running this operation. This wasn't just a couple of small favors she was doing for Will or anyone else. This is bigger." The footage showed Violet checking documents, scanning barcodes, and even making calls to what looked like suppliers, giving instructions about where to send the goods next. Every movement she made exuded control. I couldn't process the shock. The sister I had loved and protected, the one I had trusted without question, was involved in something far darker than I ever could have imagined. "She's running this whole thing, and Will's not the mastermind like we thought," Raymond muttered, his voice steady, but there was a fire in his eyes. "He's been using her. She's the one pulling the strings, the one making the real decisions." I felt the room closing in on me, the weight of betrayal suffocating. I had always believed Violet was the innocent one, the one who never asked for too much. But now, I realized I'd been wrong. I exhaled shakily. "What do we do now? How do we stop this?" Raymond's eyes met mine, and for a moment, I saw the same burning determination in them that I felt in my chest. "We get the evidence. We take this to the authorities and make sure she and Will can't hurt anyone else. But we can't stop there, Helena. You've got to protect your name. This will follow you if you don't take action." I nodded. It wasn't enough to just clear my name anymore. I had to expose everything, stop them before they could do even more damage. The investigation into Violet and Will's operation had gone from something I thought I could ignore to a fight for my own future. We were getting closer to the truth. I could feel it. But the truth came at a cost. There was no turning back now. It had been a week since the breakthrough with the warehouse footage. Raymond and I had spent countless hours digging into Violet's involvement, and each piece of evidence pointed back to her. But now, it was time to confront the people who had been complicit in this entire scheme, my parents. I sat in the living room of our family home, my hands trembling slightly as I waited for them to arrive. I had gathered everything: the forged documents, the transactions, the footage of Violet orchestrating the shipments under my name. I was prepared, but the weight of what I had to do still sat heavy in my chest. When the doorbell rang, I stood up from the couch and walked toward the door. I could feel my heart beating in my throat as I opened it. My parents stood there, looking uncomfortable but not surprised. They had seen me at my lowest, but this was different. I wasn't the daughter they had always known. I wasn't the one who had blindly accepted their half-truths anymore. "Helena," my mother said softly as she stepped into the house, "what's all this about? We're family. You know we'll always have your back." I glanced at my father, who had already begun to settle into one of the chairs, his eyes tired but alert. "You can't pretend anymore," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I have the evidence. I know what you've been letting happen, and I'm done turning a blind eye." My mother's face flickered with guilt, but she quickly masked it with a forced smile. "What evidence? What are you talking about?" I took a deep breath and placed the folder on the coffee table between us. It felt like a weight had just dropped into the room. As I opened it, I watched their faces change. First confusion, then disbelief, and finally shame. "Violet and Will have been using me, and you've been too scared to question it," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I've been manipulated, lied to, and used as a pawn in their game. I didn't know this was happening under my nose, but now I do. And I can't stay quiet anymore." My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but it was my mother who spoke first. "Helena, you have to understand. We didn't know how to confront Violet. She's always been complicated. We didn't want to make things worse." "Make things worse?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You're telling me that you let her get away with it?" You let her drag me into a fraudulent scheme because you were too afraid to stand up to her? My father finally spoke, his voice low. We didn't want to hurt anyone. It's just, we didn't know. You have to believe that. We didn't know how deep it had gone. I stood there, looking down at the evidence, trying to suppress the anger that was bubbling to the surface. You didn't know? Or you just didn't want to know? I asked, my voice sharp now. You've been deceived, and you let Violet control everything. You've been complicit in maintaining this lie, and now you want to pretend like nothing happened? My mother's eyes welled with tears, and she reached out to grab my hand. Helena, please. We were afraid of what it would mean. We didn't want to lose you. Lose me? I echoed, incredulous. You've already lost me. Not because of the fraud or the lies, but because you chose comfort over truth. You knew something was off and you didn't say anything. You protected Violet's lies instead of protecting me. I could see it in their faces, the guilt, the shame, but also the fear. They didn't want to lose the illusion of family, of comfort, that had kept them complacent for so long. I swallowed the lump in my throat, trying to push the weight of the betrayal aside. I won't be part of this anymore. I can't be. I've tried to protect you all, but now I see the truth. You've been enabling this, and I can't just sit back and let it happen. Not anymore. My father didn't respond immediately, but I saw his hand shaking. My mother, still holding onto my hand, pleaded with me. Helena, don't do this. Don't cut us off. We're family. Please. But as I looked at them, two people I had always believed would stand by me, I realized that they were no longer the parents I had once known. They had chosen silence over the truth, comfort over accountability, and that was something I could no longer accept. I'm done, I said quietly, my voice steady now. I won't be part of a family that values their own comfort over the truth. I can't pretend anymore. I watched as my parents' faces crumbled in the wake of my words. They hadn't expected this. They hadn't thought I would walk away. But I wasn't walking away from family. I was walking away from the toxic lies that had held me captive for so long. And as painful as it was, it felt like a weight was lifted from my shoulders. I'm sorry, I whispered, more to myself than to them. But I have to go. I can't be here anymore. I turned and walked away, the sound of my parents' calls echoing behind me. But I didn't look back. I had made my choice, and there was no going back now. The sterile, quiet room at the NCIS office felt oppressive. Violet sat across from me, her posture rigid, eyes darting around the room like she was trying to avoid the inevitable confrontation. Her usual charm was gone, replaced by a mask of forced calm. There was no warmth in her smile, no hint of the sister I once believed I knew. Agent Nichols was seated next to me, silently observing as we prepared to confront Violet with the weight of everything we had uncovered. The evidence, dozens of forged documents, transaction histories, and warehouse footage, was enough to bury her. And yet, as I looked at her, I couldn't help but wonder what she was thinking, what kind of defense she was going to come up with. For a moment, I allowed myself to feel a flicker of pity. But I quickly shoved it aside. This wasn't the time for that. This was about getting the truth. Violet, I said softly, leaning forward slightly. Her eyes flickered to mine, and I could see the wall she had built around herself starting to crack. We have all the evidence, the warehouse footage, the forged documents. You're running an operation under my name. I need to understand why. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. For a brief second, I thought she might break. But then her shoulders stiffened and she took a deep breath. She wasn't going to break easily. I didn't want this to happen, Violet said, her voice low. She shifted in her chair, nervously folding and unfolding her hands in her lap. I didn't know how to get out of it. Will, he's been pushing me for months using my fear. He made me think I didn't have a choice. Don't lie to me, I cut her off, my voice trembling with both anger and disappointment. You knew exactly what you were doing. You used my name to cover your tracks. You knew it was wrong. Don't try to blame Will for this. Violet's eyes flickered with guilt, but her expression quickly hardened again. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I thought I could keep it under control, but everything got out of hand. Will, he said it was temporary, that it would all go away once we were done with the shipments. I didn't think it would spiral like this. Her words stung, but I didn't let myself show it. She wasn't the victim here. She had known what she was doing all along, and now she was trying to twist it into something more sympathetic. You thought you could get away with it, I said flatly, and you did for a while. But this was never just about you, Violet. You used me. You used my trust. and you've jeopardized everything I've worked for." Violet's eyes darted to Agent Nichols, then back to me. I could see the panic creeping into her gaze. She was losing control, and she knew it. But instead of owning up to her actions, she tried to deflect, her voice growing shaky. "I was just scared, okay? Will made me think it was the only way out. I didn't want to disappoint you. You're always so strong, and I—" She choked on the last word, her eyes welling with tears. "I just didn't want to lose everything." I sat back in my chair, folding my arms, watching her closely. I wasn't buying it, not anymore. "I'm not some naive little sister you can manipulate," I said, my voice steady despite the fire that burned in my chest. "You've been using me for years, Violet. Every favor, every request, it was all a way to get what you wanted. But this is different. You crossed a line." Violet's face twisted with frustration. "You don't understand. Will told me you wouldn't help me, that you wouldn't understand why I had to do it. I thought I could fix it, but I'm trapped, Helena. Trapped." I let her words sink in, watching the familiar signs of manipulation unfold before me. She was trying to play the victim, trying to make me feel sorry for her, but I wasn't falling for it anymore. "You're not trapped, Violet," I said firmly, my voice cutting through the tension. "You chose this. You chose to hurt people, and you thought you could get away with it. You weren't some helpless victim." Her eyes shifted, flicking to the door, then back at me. She wasn't going to admit what she'd done. Not fully, at least. "I thought I could fix it," she repeated, the tears threatening to fall now. "I didn't want you to know. I didn't want you to see me like this." "You're not a victim, Violet. You're not some innocent bystander in this," I said, shaking my head. "You manipulated me, and I'm done letting you get away with it." I could see her struggle with the words she was trying to find. She wanted to plead for forgiveness, but she couldn't. Not after everything. The guilt was written all over her face, but it wasn't enough. She wasn't going to change. "You made your choices," I said quietly, "and now you have to face the consequences." Violet was silent for a moment, then nodded faintly. "I'm sorry," she whispered, though I didn't believe her. It wasn't an apology for what she'd done. It was a last-ditch attempt to avoid the reality of what was coming for her. She could cry all she wanted, but it wasn't going to change anything. The truth had already come out. "I'm done," I said, standing up. "I don't need your apologies. I need the truth, and you're going to face it." I walked toward the door, feeling the weight of everything settle over me. This was it, the point of no return. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me any longer. I wasn't going to let my sister's betrayal keep me in the shadows of her lies. Violet had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. I only hoped she would finally understand the cost of everything she had done. And for me, I was done letting my family's deception define who I was. The courtroom was cold, the walls lined with silent witnesses, judges, attorneys, and officers all playing their parts in this drawn-out process. The case against Violet and Will had moved forward faster than I expected, but it didn't come without a heavy toll. Every day, it felt like I was carrying the weight of their actions on my shoulders. And now, here I was, finally, at the point where I would see them face consequences for what they had done to me. Raymond sat beside me, his hand resting on mine as I stared ahead, trying to block out the noises around me. The prosecution had presented their case, the evidence was irrefutable, and Violet had pled guilty to wire fraud and identity theft. The reduction in charges meant that she wouldn't serve as long a sentence, but it wasn't about the sentence. It was about the principle. She had finally admitted her role in the scheme. Will, on the other hand, was a different matter. He refused to take responsibility. He had denied everything, continuing to claim he was innocent and blaming everyone else for his actions. I felt my anger flare again, knowing that his arrogance and lies would never change. "I can't believe this is happening," I murmured, squeezing Raymond's hand. "After everything, after all the lies, they just get away with it." Raymond's eyes softened, and I could see the weight of his own frustration in his gaze. "It's not about getting revenge, Helena. It's about clearing your name. This is your moment. You're not letting them control your future anymore." I nodded, but the bitterness lingered in my chest. Despite Violet's guilty plea, the sting of betrayal hadn't dulled. Will was still out there, his refusal to face the truth hanging in the air like an unresolved chord. But the real victory wasn't in watching him suffer. It was in knowing I had taken back control of my life. For years, I had allowed my family to manipulate me. But now, I was standing tall, reclaiming my identity piece by piece. The judge read out Violet's sentence, less than I would have liked, but it was enough. She had pleaded guilty to ensure a lesser sentence, and part of me felt that sense of quiet satisfaction. She had been forced to face the consequences, just as she should have. And as for Will, he would face a much harsher sentence once his trial came, and that too was a small comfort. Raymond leaned over and whispered, "You did this, Helena. You brought them to justice." I swallowed hard, not sure what to say. Yes, I had been the one to gather the evidence, to connect the dots between Violet's schemes and Will's manipulation. But it wasn't just about justice for me. It was about a new beginning, a chance to rebuild my life without the shadows of betrayal hanging over me. The proceedings continued, but my mind wandered. I thought about the woman I was becoming, stronger, more resilient, and free from the toxic family dynamics that had held me back for so long. I was no longer defined by my past. I was in control of my own future. When it was all over and the final verdict had been handed down, I felt a quiet sense of closure wash over me. But my journey wasn't over. I knew this was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where I would fight for my professional reputation, rebuild my career, and secure a future where I wasn't manipulated by anyone, least of all my family. As we left the courtroom, I looked at Raymond, my heart full of gratitude. He had been my rock through all of this. His unwavering support had given me the strength to move forward, to reclaim what was rightfully mine. "I couldn't have done this without you," I said quietly, turning to him as we walked out of the building together. "You didn't have to," Raymond replied, his smile reassuring. "You've always had the strength within you, Helena. I just helped you see it." His words were comforting, but they didn't quite capture the depth of everything I had learned. I had always been strong, yes, but it was through this process of fighting back that I had truly discovered the power I possessed. We walked side by side, and for the first time in a long time, I felt lighter. There was still work to be done, still challenges ahead, but as the weight of my family's betrayal lifted off my shoulders, I felt ready to take on whatever came next. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my life, my future, and my identity, and nothing could take that from me. It had been a few weeks since the verdicts, and I finally felt the weight of everything start to lift. The long, drawn-out legal battles were over, and though I still carried the scars of the past few months, there was a sense of calm settling in. Raymond and I were sitting in the small cafe we used to visit before all of this started. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a golden hue over the table where we sat. A rare, peaceful moment amidst the chaos that had become our lives. Raymond's hand rested on mine, his thumb gently stroking my knuckles. We hadn't talked much about the legal proceedings in the last few days. There was no need. He knew as well as I did that we both needed time to breathe. "How are you holding up?" Raymond asked, his voice low but full of genuine concern. I took a slow breath, leaning back in my chair. The bitterness that had once consumed me was now fading, replaced by a quiet sense of clarity. "I'm okay. It's strange, but I think I'm finally letting go of everything. The guilt, the anger, I don't need it anymore." He gave me a soft smile. "You're stronger than you think." I met his gaze, feeling a warmth in my chest that wasn't just from the sunlight. I don't know about that, but I know I'm not the same person I was before all of this. I've learned a lot about my family, about myself. Raymond nodded, his fingers tightening slightly around mine. "You don't have to carry this alone, you know. Not anymore. You have me. Always." His words were a reminder of everything I had lost and everything I had gained. I had lost my family, the people who had deceived me, who had turned a blind eye to my sister's manipulation. But I had gained something far more valuable. I had gained my own identity back. "It's hard," I said, my voice barely a whisper, letting go of the idea of who I thought they were, who I thought we were. "But it's time. I can't keep holding on to something that never really existed." Raymond squeezed my hand, his eyes full of understanding. "I know it's not easy, but you're doing what's right for you, and that's all that matters. You deserve peace. You deserve to move forward, free from all of this." A silence fell between us, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that spoke volumes, of healing, of acceptance, and of a future we would now face together. As I looked out the window, watching the world pass by, I realized something. The past few months had changed everything, but they had also shown me just how resilient I could be. I wasn't going to let my past, my family's betrayals, define me anymore. The weight of their actions no longer had power over me. "I'm ready," I said, finally breaking the silence. "Ready to move forward. No more looking back." I have to reclaim my life, my career, my future, and I'm not going to let them hold me back. Raymond smiled, his eyes lighting up with pride. That's my girl. In that moment, I felt it. A deep, solid certainty. I was going to be okay, and I was going to take control of my own narrative. I wasn't defined by the lies or the manipulation. I was defined by my choices, my strength, and my ability to rise above it all. I've got a lot of work to do, I said, standing up and brushing the crumbs from my lap, but I'm doing it for me, and no one else. Raymond stood up beside me, pulling me into a tight hug. I'm so proud of you. You've come so far. As we left the cafe and stepped into the crisp air of the morning, I felt the weight of the past few months fade with each step. I wasn't burdened by guilt or the shadows of my family's betrayal anymore. I had found my peace, and I was ready to step into the future, unburdened and stronger than ever. It wasn't just about reclaiming my name or my career anymore. It was about reclaiming myself, my independence, my worth, my sense of peace. And with Raymond by my side, I knew I could handle whatever came next. The storm had passed, and now I was ready for the quiet calm that followed. The city skyline stretched before me as I stood by my office window, the sun just beginning to set, casting a warm glow over the buildings below. It was quiet now. The noise of the past months, the chaos, the betrayals, it had all faded into a soft hum in the background. The storm had passed, and I was finally able to breathe again. I'd spent the last several weeks putting the pieces of my life back together, reclaiming what I had lost in the wake of my family's deceit. The legal battles were behind me now, Violet's conviction secured, and Will was in prison. I wasn't seeking revenge. That had never been the goal. I had wanted the truth, and now, with everything out in the open, I could begin again. Raymond's voice cut through the stillness of the room, pulling me from my thoughts. You're a different person, you know that? I turned to him, a soft smile on my lips. He stood by the door, leaning casually against the frame, his eyes full of affection and understanding. It had been a long road, and Raymond had been with me every step of the way. His support had been my anchor, and in his presence, I had found peace amidst the storm. I think I am, I replied, my voice steady. It's like I'm finally seeing myself for who I really am, without all the noise, without all the lies. I'm not that person anymore. Raymond walked over to me, his hand finding mine as we stood together side by side. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of calm that I hadn't known I was missing. I wasn't defined by my past, by the betrayal of my family. I was free. I'm proud of you, he said softly, his voice full of sincerity. You've reclaimed your life, your identity. No one can take that from you. The words hit me harder than I expected. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear them, how much I needed to believe in my own strength. The road to this moment hadn't been easy, but I had come through it stronger than ever. The legal battles, the family betrayals, the doubts, I had faced them all and emerged on the other side, ready to embrace the future. I couldn't have done it without you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. You've always believed in me, even when I couldn't see it myself. Raymond smiled, his thumb gently brushing over the back of my hand. You always had it in you. I just reminded you of what you're capable of. I nodded, feeling the truth of his words deep within me. It wasn't just about the legal victories or the justice that had been served. It was about reclaiming my sense of self, about not letting anyone, family, friends, or anyone else define me. Turning away from the window, I walked toward my desk. My computer screen was open, and the stack of paperwork that had been collecting dust now felt different. I was no longer overwhelmed by it. I was ready to dive back into my career with a new sense of clarity, a new sense of purpose. The shadows of my past had lifted, and I was free to shape the future on my own terms. I sat down at my desk and opened a new document. I paused for a moment, my fingers hovering over the keys, and then I began to type. Journal entry. Today marks the beginning of something new. After everything that's happened, I've come to realize that my identity isn't something that can be stolen. It's mine. It always has been. I spent so long letting others control the narrative, letting them dictate who I was and what I meant. But now, I know who I am. And I'm not afraid to stand in that truth. My career is mine to build, my future mine to shape. I will no longer let the ghosts of my past haunt me. I am free. I hit save and leaned back in my chair, the weight in my chest lifting with every word. This was the moment I had been waiting for, not just the end of a chapter, but the beginning of a new one. Raymond walked over to my side, placing his hand on my shoulder. You ready? I looked up at him, a feeling of peace washing over me. More than ready. For the first time in a long time, I felt in control. I wasn't the victim of my family's lies, nor was I defined by their actions. I was Helena, strong, resilient, and unapologetically me. And I was ready to step forward into the life I was meant to live. As Raymond and I left my office that evening, I felt the weight of the past finally slip away. The world outside was vast, full of possibilities, and I was ready to embrace it all. My future was mine to create, and nothing, no one, could take that from me.